What's up, everybody? Welcome to Fed by Fire. I'm Christian Whitlow. Thank you for tuning in. So we're going to break down some current events, some headlines. We're going to kick it and hang out. I'm grateful y'all are here. Thank you for joining me tonight. We're going to talk about what's really going on in the world in real time, and we're not here for recycled takes or surface level news. We're here to look at what happened, why it matters, and, predictions on what might be coming. From court cases to culture shifts to, breaking stories out of nowhere. If it's moving in real time, we're going to take a look at it. And I'm happy to be here with you guys. Let's get into it. So, according to federal prosecutors, 15 people, 15 were indicted on charges including conspiracy to impede or injure federal officers, along with other alleged offenses tied to efforts to disrupt federal immigration enforcement operations within the Minneapolis area. And prosecutors alleged that the defendants were connected to two Minneapolis-based groups they described as quote-unquote antifa. And they were part of these organizations, and these members coordinated surveillance, blockades, what they would say is stalking of the agents, and other actions aimed at interfering with ICE and other federal officers' day-to-day operations. 12 people were arrested, one was already in custody, and 2 remain at large at the time of this announcement. And a few important points of context that I really want to talk about is, Antifa is not a single, national organization or gang with formal members. It is generally used to describe a decentralized anti-fascist movement. And, being charged is not the same as being convicted. Everybody's got their day in court. The government must still prove its allegations, and the defendants, are presumed innocent until proven guilty. That's just what it is. And, if you draw a blank when it comes to who these people are, they're, the ones that are outside of the ICE facilities in the furry outfits and the blowy outfits, stopping them from getting their vehicles in and out all over the country. And federal officials say that the case is about alleged criminal conduct and has nothing to do with picking them out, no political beliefs or protected speech. Defense attorneys and critics have argued, though, that Antifa is just a label, that it is being used politically, and that some of the conduct amounted to protest activity more than anything. But we'll see in court. President Trump did issue executive actions and directives targeting groups associated with violence at protests, and I agree wholeheartedly. But the claim that Antifa was formally designed as a domestic terrorist organization, which I don't think it started as that, but it's became that. It's a legally complicated situation because the United States, doesn't have a domestic terrorist organization designated process. There's no equivalent to foreign terrorist organizations on the list. The administration has frequently described Antifa as domestic terrorists, but there are no official federal designation systems for domestic groups like this. So we'll see what happens. And it works the same way as foreign terrorist designations. We'll see. Next, let's talk about Travis Barker. I'm a big fan from way back. He's back in the headlines again. And it's not about a new album or about a red carpet moment. It's about the part of his life that most people never got to see. The part where addiction stops being a habit and turns into survival mode. So in his documentary, Louder Than Fear, new details come out through his ex-wife, Shauna Moakler, who claims that at the height of his addiction, he was taking around 20 to 30 prescription painkillers a day. And she described a situation where, things were so unstable and so crazy that, there were real fears that he might not wake up one day in the morning, with people reportedly even keeping watch of him while he slept. And I've been that guy before. It's not fun. And that's the part of the story that hits hardest for me. Not the fame, not the music, but how fast things can spiral when painkillers become the center of someone's life. And it happened to me. I've seen it happen to thousands of Americans. And this is where I've got to be honest, because, I don't ever just cover these stories from the outside. I only talk about the shit that I've lived around. And I've lived in that same world, the cycle where one pill turns into a routine, and the routine turns into something that you can't step away from without everything shaking at once. And you don't always realize that you're in deep until normal life starts feeling like a thing you're trying to escape instead of the thing you're trying to get back. And, but he beat it. I'm glad for him. And that's why the stories like Barker's aren't just celebrity headlines to me. They're reminders of how addiction doesn't really care about status, about money, about success. It moves the same way whether you're on a stage or not. And Barker eventually had a breaking point after the 2008 plane crash and the long recovery that followed that. And, he's spoken openly about getting sober and rebuilding from that place. So I'm happy he did. He's an inspiration to all of us. But the reason, the documentary lands so heavy is because it shows the middle of it, the part where everything is still, unstable and nobody knows how it ends yet. And if you've ever been close to that world, then you already know the truth. That it doesn't usually look dramatic in the moment. It looks normal right up until it isn't, until you're forced to stop. And that's the line a lot of people don't see until they've already crossed it. You know what I mean? And this next one, isn't about death. It's about what happens when talent moves faster than discipline can keep up. And I wanted to talk about Mr. Aldon Smith. So he came into the league like a storm. First round pick. Immediately, immediate production. In, his first 2 seasons, he was putting up some serious numbers that looked like he was built in a lab. Sacks stacking up faster than most veterans could manage in a full career. The NFL didn't just notice him, they depended on him. But off the field, the cracks were already there. The damage was already done. Alcohol incidents, legal issues, suspicions, rehab stints, and every time it looks like he was stabilizing, something else would surface and, and it would just reset his progress. It really would. And the league suspended him multiple times, and eventually the pattern became a little too familiar. A comeback attempt, momentum, setback, silence. And that's what makes Aldon Smith's stories hit harder for me, is that, it wasn't one moment that broke everything. It was a repetition. The same cycle, pressure, escape, consequences, restart. And I know that cycle myself. It sucks. And while the fans debate discipline or accountability, the deeper layer is simpler and more uncomfortable. That untreated issues don't disappear just because someone is talented enough to outrun them for a while. And, that's the reality of it. He did eventually step away from the NFL spotlight, but the conversation around him never really stopped because he was just such a talented guy. Because his story isn't just sports, it's what happens when high performance and personal collapse occupy the same timeline. Not every downfall is loud. Some are just slow. Erosion in the public view. Sometimes the hardest battles aren't fought on the stage or in the studio. They're fought behind closed doors. And that's the truth of the matter. R.I.P. to him, and my prayers go out to his family. Next, let's talk about the reports that have surfaced that Jelly Roll, real name Jason DeFord, has filed for divorce from his wife Bunny XO after nearly a decade of marriage, a relationship that started in 2015 in Las Vegas, turned into a marriage into 2016 and became one of those rare public love stories that everyone loves to see, that people actually rooted for them. And that's what makes this one hit just a little different. Because this wasn't a quiet couple, this was a couple that told their truth out loud. And I respect that so much. The addiction, the struggles, the cheating history, the rebuilding, the vows, they got their vows renewed in 2023. All of it lived in public view, and that's got to be a really hard thing. Now the court filing cites, inconsolable differences, and while neither side has fully spoken out in detail, the tone around it doesn't feel like chaos. It feels like exhaustion. And like two people who fought for it for a long time and finally hit the limit of what love alone can fix. And it's got to be hard at any public relationship. And if you've ever lived in recovery or just in real pressure, then you know this truth that sometimes love doesn't fall. Life just gets heavier than, what two people can carry together. There's no villain, as far as I know. There's no winner. There's no clean ending. Just two people who built something real, trying to, figure out their way, through life like me and you, how to close a chapter without burning the whole book. And that's the main thing. So from here at Fed by Fire, I just want to say this plain. My condolences to both of them as a couple. Not because someone died, but because something real is ending. I hope they figure it out for their kids, and that matters. Public relationships carry a weight that most people will never understand unless you've been in it. Every mistake is amplified, every fight is rumored, every private struggle is turned into content for strangers. And I'm guilty of that too. That pressure alone can crack even the strongest foundation. And we've seen it throughout history, and still the hope is simple. That whatever happens next for both of them, that they find peace because they deserve it for themselves, for their families, and for everything they have built together. Because at the end of the day, nobody really wins in a breakup. No one does. No one ever wins in a breakup. Just different paths. Alright, next let's talk about Oliver Tree. On June 14, 2026, in a mid-air helicopter collision over western Rio de Janeiro. So the crash took 6 lives. The crash is still under investigation by Brazilian authorities. Internet theories have tried to connect the accident to his former label, Atlantic Records, and I've seen this circulating a lot. There is no evidence supporting those claims, but it was a tragic accident, and prior to his death, Tree had a very public falling out with Atlantic in April 2026. he revealed the label had shelved his album Love You Madly, Hate You Badly. He parted ways with them and released the project independently through his own imprint, Alien Boy Records. The 17-track album, which he handled on his own terms, after years of feeling the label's marketing and support didn't match his vision or, the revenue he generated. None of it matched. It became his final release. It mixed, the alt pop and deadpan style he was known for, and fans have returned to it heavily since the crash. Tree built his career outside the usual playbook. I'm a huge fan for viral hits. Distinctively, he had a crazy look, persona, Coachella appearances, while staying direct about the industry and his frustrations. His decision to walk away from the major label deal and put, the record out himself was the clearest statement of how he wanted to end that chapter. But I'm a huge fan. R.I.P. to him. His music and the way that he finished his story stand as a reminder that artists can push back against the system when it doesn't serve their work. Love You Madly, Hate You Badly is now streaming as he, intended. Independent, and R.I.P. to him and his family, that's a horrible thing. So rest in peace, Oliver Tree. Thank you guys for hanging out with me today, for watching Fed by Fire. If you're still here, then you already know that we don't just report what's happening. We break that shit down, bag it up, and give it to you. The current events that most people only see headlines, we discuss it. Stay locked in, stay aware, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.